Today, I want to show you 8 amazing and sometimes free plugins that you may not know. I'm gonna have some production-related plugins and I'm going to have some mixing-related plugins. Let's start with this first one over here, which is called Spacer. Now I'm first going to play you the sound as it originally was in the project. As you can hear, we have this really nice, very big reverb, but what if we want something a little bit more interesting in terms of the space? What we can do is use this plugin Spacer over here. This is a plugin that you can now pick up for free. Unfortunately, it is a little bit of a sad story as the company that made it is going out of business, but that does mean that they're leaving some free plugins behind. As you can see, this plugin contains 7 different effects. We have the reverb, convolution, grain reverb, delay, grain delay, chorus, and in some utilities over here. These two share the same tiles over here and they're fixed in this last position over here, but these earlier tiles you can just move them around however you want and you can create your own signal chain this way. And as you can see, you get a lot of controls. There's even more for some of these modules over here and this one as well. This one as well. Each effect also comes with its own dedicated EQ, which is just 2 bands over here. You have a low pass filter and a high pass filter, and you can both turn them into peaks as well as shelves. This is just handy to shape the tone of the individual effect over here. But the cool thing comes in with the randomization. As you can see over here, there's different randomization options. You can randomize basically all of the parameters of an individual module or of the whole preset. As you can see, it doesn't move around the effects for you, so it doesn't generate a whole new chain for you. But the coolest thing is just to randomize a bunch of different effects to see what kind of spaces you're going to get. So as you can see, this plugin can really make more interesting space in terms of the delay and the reverb. Of course, it also comes with a whole bunch of different presets, both on the whole plugin, as you can see over here. There's 150 different presets. And then also the individual modules come with presets as well. So as I said, this is a free plugin, so definitely make sure that you check it out. There will be links to all of the pages where you can get these plugins in the description. But the next plugin that I want to talk about comes in here in this section in terms of the drums. So what I want to do is a little test to see if you can actually spot the difference between the plugin actually being engaged and disengaged. And maybe in the comments down below, see if you can guess what the difference is between these two playbacks. Alright, so let me know if you got the plugin Randomachine changing randomly the formats, pitch, timing, the ambience and the panning of all of the drums that are being played here. Well, I say all of the drums, it is not exactly all of the drums over here. You can see the 5 channels that have Randomachine inserted on the channel over here. And what this plugin does is it detects all of the transients inside of a loop. So you can see here it's detecting all of those claps. And what you'll see happening over here is that it constantly changes this parameter over here. It is a little bit of a weird graphic. It's not really easy to understand, but you can see different lights turn on here. And that is just indicating a different random setting for all of these different effects. And the whole idea behind this plugin is that it takes a drum loop that is very stagnant and it just spices it up a little bit by having every impact a little bit different sounding. So this is a really great plugin if you ever deal with stuff like this, which are the Cashmere loops over here. I'm just playing this loop for a very long time, and I don't want it to become boring and repetitive and the same exact thing all the time. So that's just what Randomachine does for me. You can hear a fairly stagnant loop. If we turn Randomachine on, we get this. And yes, the rhythm is still the same, but you can hear that there is overall a little bit more movement to it, as each impact has a slightly different tone to it. And of course, you can go overboard with a plugin like this. If I set it all to the maximum value, then it's just going to break all of the sounds. But hey, it doubles as a glitch generator. Speaking of glitch effects, let's have a look at some of those. The first one that I want to share with you is Maim. This is a little bit more of an unknown glitch effect, but it does very cool digital distortion and kind of audio manipulation. There's some spectral effects in here, meaning that you can reassign frequencies, and you can also have this spectral effect over here. This is kind of like a formant shift, and this is kind of like a threshold for all of the frequencies that it's going to let through. So there's some really cool stuff in it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to play it on this sequence over here. And then we'll try to glitch it up a little bit. So as you can hear, you can get some crazy sounds out of this. Now this might not be the best source to show this kind of thing. I would maybe dive much deeper into some glitchy sound design, but I think that that would be cool for a separate video, so make sure that you subscribe to the channel to catch that. Anyway, another plugin that goes great for glitchy stuff is Codec. That's this little plugin over here, and something that it really does very cool is the way that it handles the losses and the way that you can set it to repeat. Again, on the same synth, it's going to sound somewhat like this. Notice that you can change the bitrate in here, but the main cool thing is the loss over here, because it emulates kind of how mobile phones lose signal sometimes. And then what you can do is you can set it to repeat, and that is where the real glitchiness comes in, because what it's going to do is it's going to take the last buffer and just repeat it until there's the next thing that comes through with the loss. So you get something like this. And as you can imagine, this can also create some really cool glitchy effects in your tracks. Now both of these last plugins have been free, but the next one that I want to show you isn't, unfortunately. And that plugin is ShaperBox 3. I know it's been out for a while, I know that it's been popular for a while, but I just want to highlight some of the things that it can do. This is not going to be an in-depth guide, this is just going to be like a simple showcase. The way that this plugin works is that you have 10 different effects, which are all time-based. So you get this massive curve down below that you can edit here. And essentially any of the parameters that you see over here can be automated this way. So as you can see, if I open up the filter module over here, there's 2 different parameters that you can modulate. And this by default is just set to 1 bar of modulation. Now this has great editing tools. It has pre-built curves. It has a whole bunch of different things. You can save custom curves over here. And of course, combining different effects is very powerful as well. What I'm just going to do is run through some of the presets, which is also really good because it has this crazy preset browser over here. You can basically search for whatever category of effect that you're looking for. And then here on the right, you can see all of the different presets. You can of course favorite them over here, but you can also see which individual device is actually being used in every preset. So you can see up here, we have the time, the drive, the noise, the filter, the liquid, which is kind of like a flanger thing. The crush is bit crushing, we have volume shaper, we have the panning over here, we have a reverb shaper, we have an overall width shaper, and then we have a compressor over here. The compressor is not a time-based effect and just opens up like this. As you can see, there's a compressor and an oscilloscope over here that you can use as well. So you can even use this plugin to look at your kick and bass, for example. But going back through the preset browser, you can just see which device is being used here. And you can even say, okay, I want to have at least a drive in here, and I want to have at least a liquid in here. And then it just gives you the presets that at least have those 2 effects in there. And of course you can clear that and see all of the presets again. And this is a great way to just find different modulations that you can put on top of your sounds. And as you can hear, you can get some crazy variations out of it. One final thing to note here is that for each of the modules, you actually have 3 bands available. So if you drag this down over here, you get your high band. And if you just drag this up over here, you get your low band. And then you can set the crossover over here. It also gives you the frequency. And you basically have 3 different bands that you can edit. Now, as I said before, this is a very deep plugin, so if you want maybe like a guide on this kind of plugin, make sure to leave a comment so that I can work on that. Alright, now let's get into Reaper so that we can have a look at some of the mixing tools that I want to show you. You may notice that I look a little bit different. I did indeed shave my head in the meantime, and that is because I had to re-record this section because my desktop audio wasn't recording for some reason. That is one of the many perks of being a music producer. You'll have a very complex audio routing setup that just makes no sense and always breaks. Anyway, let's get into Reaper over here. This is the mixing project for my upcoming track, The Game of Life. And the first tool that I want to show you is going to be Luftikus. Now let's quickly set up the example over here. I'm just going to open up a box standard EQ over here, and I'm just going to make this top loop over here a little bit darker. So this is it originally. This is how it's going to be mixed into the track. And then with the equalizer, it's going to sound very dark. And these are usually the kind of situations where I go into Luftikus, which is a free EQ plugin, to kind of boost the higher frequencies in a very nice way. So Luftikus over here is just a very simple EQ. You can see we have 5 fixed bands over here, and then we have a band that we can also set manually. You can see that we have a bunch of different frequency options over here. There's a few more options over here. We have the mastering modes, which just sets this to steps as opposed to like continuous controls over here. We can enable all of the analog emulation over here. There's a little bit of noise, there's a little bit of saturation, all of that good stuff. And we have an auto gain feature as well as a trim over here. But other than that, this is a very standard kind of EQ. The cool thing where I like to use this EQ is not really in these lower parameters over here, but really just this parameter over here. And what I like to do is I like to set this high shelf over here to 40K. Now that may seem very strange because it's much higher than the frequencies that we're usually working with. In fact, this kind of frequency is completely inaudible to the human ear. So why would you boost that frequency? Well, going back into this equalizer over here, you can see that we're kind of cutting over here, but that the shape is kind of curving down into lower frequencies. So this cut is happening at around 6.5K, but the effects are still happening at 3K, maybe even a little bit at 2K over here. And the same thing is going to be true in Luftikus. If we start boosting over here, that shelf will kind of bleed in into the audible frequencies. Of course, it's also becoming louder, so let's use the auto gain over here. And as you can see, we have this very easy to use high-end control over here, which is just kind of like an amount of air. And with this particular setup, it is really easy to dial in because we have the auto gain over here. And because this is such a soft high shelf going into those higher frequencies, it's not going to make it overly harsh. Of course, unless you do something like this. But even here, it's not painful, it's not annoying in any way. It is still sounding fairly natural. Of course, you can go too far with a plugin like this. And in this particular case, of course, we have it toned down a lot here. We have -8 dB of gain reduction over here. Before we go into this plugin over here. And if I turn this off and you hear this on a regular source, the way that it would normally come out of a production, you would hear that this is actually like overdone. But if you need to restore some brightness or if you just need to tone it up a little bit, then this is definitely a tool that you can use for that. Now, the next plugin that I want to look into, I'm going to be dead honest, I haven't looked into it too much yet. This is the Lifeline Console over here. I'm still kind of experimenting with it. As you can see, I'm running the light edition. As you can see from the presets over here and the fact that all of the presets start with LE. And also from the fact that when I hover over all of these parameters, you can see that the full license is required for the advanced page. But still, I can tell that even the light edition of this plugin is going to be very nice because this is one of those plugins where, again, you can just move around different things over here and create your own signal paths. And this is what I really like about these kind of plugins, is that you get like a much bigger range of possibilities because you're able to change the signal path and you're able to change how all of these different effects interact with each other. Now, when it comes to these different effects, we have an EQ, we have this modulation over here, we have a compressor, and we have a preamp, and finally this wear over here as well. I would kind of put these as it was before over here and over here. This is the default setup, but the way that you can think of it is that this is kind of like your mixing stuff, and then this is your emulation stuff of like old consoles and that kind of stuff. As you can see, you have 3 modes, the tape, the vinyl, and the cassettes, and that's true for both of these over here. Here, of course, you also have 3 modes, so you can see that we have 3 EQ modes, we have 3 compressor modes over here, and we have 3 preamp modes over here. So this part over here is going to be your very basic mixing controls. You have your saturation, you have your compression, and you have your equalization over here. And this is just going to introduce a little bit of extra character to the sound in form of the degrading that you'll often hear in different kind of old school analog forms of recording or processing. Now, as I said, I'm running the light edition over here. I'm not 100% sure if the light edition means that it's free or if it's just like a lower price than the full version. I looked over the website back when this segment was recorded before and I couldn't really figure it out. But of course, there will be a link to the website down below so you can check it for yourself. Anyway, there's some more controls over here on the right. The main ones, as you can see, are the input and the output volume over here. This is just very useful, 1, for volume balancing, but 2, to also drive it into the preamp if you want to drive it a little bit harder. We also have these controls over here, which change the tonality of the sound. As you can see, we have this triangle over here where you can choose between 3 different modes. And then you also have the warmth amount over here and the shine amount over here. These are just parameters that enhance the warm frequency area and the shining frequency area, or like the bright frequency area of the sound. And I'll now just play them on top of a bunch of different sequences. That's where I've loaded it, and then we can hear what it sounds like. As you can hear, some quite cool sound possibilities over here. There's definitely some degrading going on in some of the presets where you can really hear the kind of modulation happening and sometimes even the wear happening with that noise in there. But other presets are just very nice to maybe brighten up a sound or to darken it a little bit. And of course, you can just dive in and dial in your own signal chains as well. That is probably how I would use it in the future. As I said, I haven't really explored this plugin too much yet, but overall I just find it cool. And the main thing that I like about these plugins, as I said before, is just the ability that you can make your own signal path and just move stuff around like this. A plugin that doesn't really need that kind of feature though is Bark of Dog 2. Again, for this example, we just need to do a little bit of modification. Here we are on the kick channel, and what I'm just going to do is remove some of the lower frequencies. Let's set it to around 200 Hz, and let's go maybe like -5 dB for this example. This is again just emulating the fact that maybe you're missing a lot of those frequency areas and you just want to introduce a little bit more. So currently the kick in the mix without Bark of Dog is going to sound like this. Of course, originally without the EQ that we're using, it's going to sound like this. So you can hear that we're definitely missing some of those lower frequencies. Of course, that is exactly what this EQ is doing, so that is what you would expect. But the way that you can introduce those lower frequencies is with Bark of Dog over here. So what this essentially allows you to do is just boost a certain frequency area, as you can see over here. But this is a really cool way of working in the same way that the Luftikus is, in the sense that it sounds very natural and it isn't really too easy to overuse it. Of course, just like any other plugin, you can overuse it and you still have to be careful and you still have to be listening. But you can go in here and just set up a setting that maybe looks a little bit strange if you would use that in a normal EQ. But in this particular plugin, it just makes sense. So as you can see, we're boosting 43 Hz right now with 10 dB here. In this case, we're using the passive mode over here. As I said, it doesn't really sound too unnatural. It doesn't really sound too overdone. Of course, again, you can overdo it. And then you're just going to massively destroy your lower frequencies. But even here at around halfway, it doesn't sound overdone to me and it doesn't sound too extreme to me. Of course, this is never the kind of way that you would want to mix. As I said before, we're basically introducing the problem that we're then trying to solve with a different plugin. That is normally not something that you would do. But if you're lacking some of those lower frequencies and your kick actually needs those lower frequencies back introduced, then this is a way that you can do that. So those are all 3 of the mixing plugins that I wanted to show. With that, we're at the end of the video for today. I hope that you enjoyed this one. Let me know if you did by leaving a like and making sure that you're subscribed. Another way to support the channel is to continue watching some of my videos. So there will be 2 up on the end cards right now. So just pick one and enjoy, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.